In 2022, I made one of the stupidest decisions of my life. See, along with balancing this YouTube channel and balancing my work as a high school student, I also race my own shifter kart on the weekends. I do autocross with the SCCA, something I've been doing since 2013 and something that I've amassed 8 championships in, including one this past year. 2022 was going to be an interesting year for me. I dropped about 40 pounds in the off season, and it would be my second season driving the kart I have now. I will say that this kart was and still is a bit of a problem child. I call it a problem child mainly because if you've ever seen me drive it, you know that I'm wrestling this thing more often than not. It's a 2002 Tony Kart, and was funnily enough built in a time when Paul Tracy was working with Tony Kart. You can't really see the Paul Tracy karting logos on the bodywork, but trust me when I say that they are there. The motor I have on currently is a 1998 Honda CR125 dirt bike motor, which I believe is one of the oldest shifter kart motors currently in the SCCA. With the 40-ish horsepower that the motor pumps out, the 6-speed transmission which guarantees shifts in the double digits in a 30-second run, and just the sheer violence of driving a shifter kart, you gotta be on your A game both physically and mentally to drive it. So let's talk about the time that I raced this thing days after having a deadly high fever. If I remember correctly, it was a Wednesday before the race when I had a horrible night's rest. I pretty much felt like I was dying, and maybe had 2.5 hours of sleep at most. I knew I was at least a little sick the day before because I was feeling a bit groggily that evening, but even still, I didn't think it was this bad. I was so weak and frail that I could barely move, and I was pretty much in a constant state of sleep paralysis. Even when I woke up, I couldn't eat, could barely move, and my dad said I looked extremely frail. Now for context, I'm about 6 foot 240. I am not a small individual by any means, but my dad said it looked like I'd break in half if a feather dropped on me. Eventually I checked my fever in the morning, and I had to put my glasses on to make sure I wasn't seeing things. The thermometer I used said 105 degrees. Now for those who don't know, like I did at the time, a 105 fever is knocking on the door of something called hyperpyrexia, which is a condition where a fever starts to damage internal organs, something that is possibly life-threatening. Knowing what I know now, I should have moseyed my way off to the hospital, but instead I just stayed home. The first of many stupid decisions I made in this time. Now for context, my next race is that upcoming Sunday, meaning I had less than 4 days to somehow get better. Now at this point, some of you may be thinking, well why not just skip out on this race and go to the next one? Well, as it turns out, that wasn't really an option for me. This would be the second event of the season, and if I didn't show up, I would have 0 points on the board, as I had also skipped out on event 1 a few weeks prior. Plus I had already paid the $80 entry fee for the race, and I didn't want to go to waste. I was at one point on food stamps as a kid. I know how much $80 means to some people, and I didn't want my $80 just to get burnt in a fire. In hindsight, the choice to race only days after having a deadly high fever is one of the stupidest decisions I've made in my whole life. I've been on this planet for 18 years. You can take my word for it that I've made some stupid decisions. But unless I decide to run for some kind of political office, this is gonna be up at the tippy top of the list until the day I die. I was almost guaranteed not to be fully in the zone mentally, and I was definitely not in prime condition physically to drive a shifter kart. In my time sick, I survived almost entirely off of toast and water, and lost about 8 pounds, mainly because I had at most 500 calories a day, and my bowel movements at this time resembled tap water in South Philadelphia. Despite all the reasons why I shouldn't have raced on Sunday, I still did. Something to also take into consideration is the fact that in the type of racing I do, you don't just race, you also have to work the track. That Sunday, when I wasn't balled up in the passenger seat of my dad's '06 Jeep Liberty, I was either driving my ass off or working my ass off. All I ate that day was a cream cheese bagel, a small sandwich for lunch, and 4 bottles of body armor. And keep in mind, these aren't the small little bottles that you get in a 6-pack at a grocery store. These are the full-blown 28-ounce bottles. In terms of my driving, I did surprisingly good. I ended up winning my class, and was the fastest vehicle on the property by about 9/10 of a second. And I would have won the event by 1.5 seconds if it wasn't for a cone massacre on my last run that got me 8 seconds worth of time penalties. I must have been so anxious to just get home and fall asleep that I drove as hard as I could. I was barely strong enough to turn the wheel at slow speeds, and struggled to shift gears all day long. You can even see in the video of me driving that day, I had to shift my whole body just to shift gears. When I got home and back to the comfort of my bed, I dropped like a sack of flour, and slept for the next 14 hours. So if you ever want to know what's the worst thing you could ever do for your body, here it goes. Contract an illness which gives you a nearly life-threatening fever 4 days before you have to drive a shifter cart, an activity that some have said requires the fitness of a fighter pilot to do for extended periods of time. Survive solely off of tap water, toast, Advil, and a couple hours of sleep for those 4 days. Show up to the track and spend a majority of the day either driving, working the course, or lying in the fetal position in your 2006 Jeep Liberty. Then finally get home, tired, sunburnt, bruised, and emotionally drained. Get a quick shower before slipping into bed, and then suddenly realize that you have 4 days of schoolwork to do the very next day. The fact I managed to look as alive as I did when I took that helmet off is honestly a miracle. Thank you for watching, and have a great afternoon.